So now that we've talked about angles, how to draw them, how to write them, how to notate them, it's time that we start talking about special pairs of angles. Because often when we talk about angles, it's not about angles that are separate from one another, but what they do when they're combined. And the two major angles we want to talk about, and the two that we're going to use to talk about special pairs of angles, are straight angles and right angles. Now, these are two of the most important types of angles that we have. Obviously, you can see right angles in a lot of things, out in the world. Most buildings are based on right angles. Straight angles, being straight lines, as you can imagine, are very important things. And so when we talk about special pairs of angles, we talk about pairs of angles that create one of these two really important angles that we have. So if we have a straight line, for example, like we do on this wall here, we can ask what type of angle do we have? Well, obviously, that is a straight angle. And we can see, because there are several lines coming down off of this vertex dot, one in this direction and one in that direction, that we can actually create some angles out of that straight angle and some other lines. And that if we have angle 1 in this space and angle 2 in this space, that together they actually create the complete straight angle. And when two angles combine like this to form a straight angle of 180 degrees, we call those two angles supplementary. So go ahead, pause the video, write down the definition of supplementary angles here, as well as this picture to help you remember what they look like. Now, if we wanted to take this a step further and write this down as an equation, what we do when we talk about measures adding up to 180 degrees is that we use the letter M in front of the angle name to represent its measure. So angle 1 itself is formed by these two rays, but the measure of angle 1 is notated M angle 1. And that can be true if we decided to name this angle A, B, C. We would call it the measure of angle ABC. Whereas angle ABC is the angle itself, the measure is its measure in degrees. So we can say that the sum of the measures of those two angles gives us 180 degrees. Now, that's for a straight angle. We also have a second type of special angle, which this kind of angle, of course, is a right angle. And as you can see from the image here, we can create that right angle out of two smaller angles that are made from the lines on that image. And so again, we have an angle 1 and an angle 2, and together they create this one right angle, which again, as we saw before, is designated by that little box right there. And when two angles add up, the measures of two angles add up to 90 degrees, the two angles themselves combine to form a right angle, we call those angles complementary rather than supplementary. So go ahead, pause the video, and write down the definition of complementary angles. We'll go ahead and write down the equation for the measures like we had for supplementary angles and this image here so you can remember what it looks like. Go ahead, pause the video, and come back when you're ready to move on. So often with complementary and supplementary angles, of course, identifying that two angles themselves are supplementary or two angles are complementary is one of the important things that we do. But one of the more useful things we talk about is if we imagine, for example, that we want to create a right angle, but the angle that we have is 24 degrees, we can find the angle that adds to 24 to become 90, just like we can find the angle that adds to 45 to become 180. Or to make supplementary angles. So I'm going to ask you to pause the video. We're going to do a few problems here to make sure that you understand what we're talking about with calculations. You're going to find a complementary angle for these three angles on the left. That is, find another angle where that angle that's given plus the new angle are equal to 90 degrees. And for the angles on the right, with the green star, you're going to find the angle that would be added to 45 degrees. To 127 degrees, or to 179.5 degrees to create 180 degrees or a straight angle. So go ahead, pause the video, work out those calculations, and come back when you are ready to move on. So for 24 degrees, we want to create 90, so we can just take 90 minus 24 to get 66 degrees. as the complementary angle there. For 48.5 degrees, where we want to create 90, we're going to need 41.5 degrees, or 90 minus 48.5, and 45 degrees is actually complementary to itself, because 45 plus 45 is 90. When it comes to the supplementary angles, where we want to take 180 minus 45, we end up with 135 degrees. If we start with 127, we take 127 away from 180, then we need 53 degrees for a supplementary angle. And finally, for 197.5, we just need an angle measure of 1/2 of a degree. So again, when we talk about special pairs of angles, we start with two of the most important ones that we have. One of them is supplementary angles to create a straight angle. Angles whose measures add up to 180 degrees are called supplementary. Angles whose measures add up to 90 degrees are called complementary. And those are the first of several special pairs of angles that we'll be talking about in this geometry